Imagine a night long ago, in a time when the world was lit only by flickering torches and the pale glow of the moon. The streets of a medieval town are quiet, yet not silent. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks, and the clatter of a horse-drawn cart echoes faintly across cobblestones worn smooth by generations of footsteps. The air carries a mixture of scents: baked bread from the bakery, smoke from hearth fires, and a faint, lingering tang of something far less pleasant. Tonight we are not walking among kings or knights, not exploring grand banquets or battlefields. Instead, we are about to enter a world that few dared to examine: the hidden, surprising, and often shocking world of medieval toilets. It may seem strange, even a little uncomfortable, to think of human waste as a subject of fascination. Yet in these quiet, overlooked spaces, the remnants of daily life have been preserved, offering a window into the past more intimate than any throne room or royal banquet ever could. Medieval toilets, chamber pots, privies, garderobes, and cesspits were more than simple conveniences. They were stages upon which entire dramas of life played out, revealing secrets about health, diet, superstition, social hierarchy, and the ingenuity of human survival. As we begin our journey, imagine yourself standing in the shadow of a stone wall, peering down into a dark, narrow shaft that once received the waste of lords, peasants, and perhaps even kings. The first thing to understand is that medieval sanitation was far from uniform. In grand castles, you might find a garderobe, a small room, often with a seat perched above a moat or deep pit, designed to dispose of human waste far from the living quarters. These were carefully constructed, sometimes with a wooden seat, sometimes with stone, occasionally with a small hole just wide enough to allow what we would politely call waste to disappear below. The garderobe was not only functional, but also symbolic. In some castles, it demonstrated the lord's control over the household and over cleanliness, or at least over the illusion of it. The moat below, often filled with water or simply open to the elements, carried away the evidence of life's most private necessities. Contrast this with the simple chamber pots used in village homes. Here the distinction between high and low, rich and poor, is stark. A chamber pot might sit quietly under a bed, or in a corner, waiting for the occupant to discreetly relieve themselves in the cover of darkness. There was no grand shaft, no strategic placement above flowing water, only a small ceramic or metal vessel, humble and intimate, bearing witness to the smallest details of human life. In these everyday objects, archaeologists have found traces of the diets, illnesses, and even superstitions of the people who used them. Every speck of residue, every fragment left behind, tells a story, stories that are both shocking and enlightening. As we delve deeper, it becomes clear that these toilets were far more than private rooms. They were treasure troves for archaeologists, historians, and scientists. Today, by examining the contents of a medieval latrine, we can discover what people ate, which herbs they relied upon for health, and even what diseases they endured. Tiny fragments of bones from small animals, bits of jewelry, lost in moments of distraction, and remnants of food all survive in these damp, dark spaces. Each piece carries a tale of life, of struggle, of ingenuity, and sometimes of sheer accident. It is astonishing to think that the humblest of human actions, relieving oneself, has become a key to understanding entire societies, revealing patterns of daily life, invisible in grand historical texts. There is a profound emotional pull in this discovery. The realization that centuries-old toilets, once considered nothing more than foul and forgettable corners of existence, are now illuminating the human condition, is both humbling and fascinating. Imagine standing in a medieval alleyway, peering into a latrine shaft, knowing that every piece of waste below is a silent storyteller. Each object, each deposit, whispers secrets of the past: what people ate for breakfast, how they coped with illness, what rituals they performed to protect themselves from disease, or what charms they left behind to ward off evil. It is in these quiet, often smelly places that we find an unparalleled intimacy with history. The shock factor, indeed, is irresistible. Medieval toilets contained far more than waste. They were repositories of daily life, reflecting everything from social class to diet, from superstition to hygiene. They remind us, gently yet profoundly, that history is not only written in grand battles or monumental architecture, but also in the quiet, unseen spaces where people lived and survived. The privy, the garderobe, the cesspit, these were not merely functional, they were central to life itself, shaping how societies understood health, cleanliness, and human dignity. Yet, as we explore this world, there is also a subtle humor. Consider the accidental treasures that ended up in toilets, a coin dropped by a distracted merchant, a small toy lost by a child, or even a piece of jewelry that slid from a lady's fingers in haste. Each discovery blends shock with delight, horror with curiosity. It reminds us that medieval people were very much like us, capable of care, clumsiness, superstition, and creativity. By studying their toilets, we bridge the centuries, finding connections in the most unexpected places. Tonight, as you drift into the quiet of sleep, allow yourself to wander these medieval streets and halls. Imagine the cool stone underfoot, the faint candlelight flickering along rough walls, the soft murmur of distant voices, and the occasional creak of wooden floors above hidden latrines. Listen for the whisper of history in these shadows, and feel the gentle pull of curiosity, guiding you to discoveries both shocking and enlightening. In these hidden corners, you will encounter the forgotten, the mundane, and the extraordinary. You will uncover secrets that challenge your assumptions about life, health, and human ingenuity in a time long past. By the end of our journey through medieval toilets, you will have seen the past from an entirely new perspective. You will understand that these unassuming spaces were arenas of daily life, laboratories of social hierarchy, and mirrors of human nature. From the humblest village privy to the grandest castle garderobe, each toilet carries a story, sometimes shocking, often fascinating, always revealing. And as you drift deeper into sleep, let these stories gently carry you into a world where curiosity meets the past, and where even the most ordinary human action opens a window into history. In this journey, you are both observer and participant. You will feel the cool stone of a castle wall, smell the faint tang of a cesspit, and glimpse the lives of people who lived centuries before you. You will encounter mysteries, surprises, and truths hidden in plain sight. And through it all, a calm, gentle voice will guide you, ensuring that even the most shocking discoveries are delivered with quiet authority and immersive storytelling. Tonight we step into the hidden world of medieval toilets, a world that is more revealing, more fascinating, and more human than you could ever imagine. And so, with curiosity as your guide, let us begin our exploration, knowing that the most ordinary places often contain the most extraordinary secrets. The doors of history are open, and beneath them lie tales waiting to be discovered, stories written not in ink, but in the evidence left behind by generations long past. Tonight we enter that secret world, and as we do, we prepare to be surprised, to be amazed, and to connect with the lives of people who in their most private moments have left us a remarkable legacy. Imagine stepping back several centuries to a time when the very idea of sanitation was still taking its tentative first steps. In the bustling villages, rolling farmlands, and towering castles of medieval Europe, people faced a daily challenge that we often take for granted: where, how, and in what manner to relieve themselves. Unlike our modern bathrooms, equipped with running water and flush mechanisms, medieval solutions were practical, humble, and deeply tied to the rhythms of life, architecture, and social hierarchy. To understand these toilets is to understand the world itself, to glimpse the ingenuity, resourcefulness, and sometimes the sheer improvisation of a people who lived without the conveniences we now consider essential. In the smallest homes, particularly in villages, the most common solution was the chamber pot. Often made of clay, metal, or even wood, the chamber pot was a personal vessel, discreetly tucked beneath a bed or inside a corner cupboard. Each household member had their own, or shared them with close family. At night, these pots served as quiet companions, their contents removed discreetly by hand or emptied into nearby ditches or fields in the early morning. Imagine a small, dimly lit room, where a mother quietly lifts a pot, careful not to wake her children, the soft creak of floorboards beneath her feet, and the chill of early morning air brushing her skin. Every action is guided by routine, necessity, and an intimate knowledge of one's environment. Yet even in these humble beginnings, practical considerations shaped design. Chamber pots often had lids, sometimes fitted with rudimentary handles or protective cloths, to keep odors contained. Some were shaped to be comfortable, reflecting a surprising attention to ergonomics. Others were purely utilitarian, their function outweighing any concern for comfort or aesthetics. And although they were small, portable, and simple, these vessels carried with them a wealth of information for those who would come centuries later. Traces of food, medicinal herbs, and even evidence of diseases can all be found in these modest remnants. As villages grew, and communities became denser, the limitations of chamber pots became apparent. The streets were narrow, and the risk of contaminating living spaces increased. This led to the gradual evolution of more permanent solutions, the privy, and in grander settings, the garderobe. A privy was typically a small wooden or stone structure, placed discreetly behind a house or along a village lane. Its design was simple but effective, a seat over a pit, sometimes lined with straw or wood, where waste could accumulate until it was emptied or allowed to decompose naturally. Imagine stepping inside such a structure, the smell muted by time and ventilation, the wooden planks worn smooth by countless feet, the narrow opening providing a quiet but functional space for an essential human act. In castles, the evolution of toilets took a more sophisticated and sometimes elaborate turn. The garderobe, a word derived from the French to garde a robe, was a small chamber built into the thickness of castle walls, often with a seat positioned over a deep chute or moat. Its dual purpose was practical and symbolic. Functionally, it allowed waste to be removed from the main living quarters, sometimes falling directly into a flowing stream or moat below, minimizing contamination and odor. Symbolically, it was a mark of status, a demonstration of the Lord's capacity to control even the most private aspects of life. Some garderobes were equipped with wooden seats, others with stone, and in particularly ingenious designs, ventilation shafts allowed odors to rise and escape, making the experience less unbearable than one might imagine. The contrast between chamber pots and garderobes is striking. One is intimate and portable, used in the quiet privacy of a small room. The other is permanent, visible in the architecture of power, sometimes even luxurious in its placement. Yet both serve the same essential function, reflecting human ingenuity, social hierarchy, and the constant negotiation between necessity and dignity. Imagine the daily rhythm of a castle, a servant discreetly ensuring that the garderobe is usable, the lord pausing briefly during a stroll through the corridors, aware that even in private matters, the arrangement of waste is a subtle reflection of order, power, and hygiene. Interestingly, the evolution of medieval toilets was also influenced by climate, geography, and available materials. In wetter regions, chutes and pits needed careful engineering to prevent flooding. In colder areas, chamber pots were often lined or insulated to reduce discomfort. In cities where density posed significant challenges, public latrines began to emerge, their placement guided by convenience, drainage, and social norms. These innovations highlight a remarkable adaptability. Medieval people faced constraints unimaginable to us today, yet they developed solutions both practical and enduring. It is also fascinating to consider the cultural nuances embedded in these toilets. In some regions, certain superstitions dictated the placement of a privy, or the rituals surrounding its use. Herbs might be scattered to mask odors, charms placed to ward off disease, or even coins dropped to bring good luck. The act of relieving oneself was far from mundane. It carried social, symbolic, and sometimes even spiritual weight. A chamber pot, a garderobe, or a village privy was never just a vessel, it was an extension of daily life, intimately connected to human concerns, fears, and hopes. Moreover, these early toilets reveal an unexpected attentiveness to health and hygiene. Medieval people, though lacking germ theory, understood through observation that filth could breed illness. Some garderobes were designed to separate liquid and solid waste, allowing water to carry away the former. Others were located away from kitchens or living quarters, a precaution against contamination. The attention to placement, materials, and maintenance demonstrates a careful balancing act. The need to remove waste efficiently while minimizing risk to the household. Imagine the meticulous care required to ensure that a privy pit does not overflow, or that a garderobe shaft remains functional across seasons, all without the conveniences of plumbing. Even in their imperfections, medieval toilets were reflections of human resilience. They demonstrate an enduring quest to reconcile nature's demands with social norms, comfort, and dignity. Each chamber pot, each garderobe, each village privy was a compromise, a blend of necessity, innovation, and adaptation. And in these compromises, we see echoes of ourselves, the desire to manage the unavoidable, to preserve privacy, to maintain order in an unpredictable world. As we study these toilets today, we are reminded that the simplest of objects can tell profound stories about who we were, how we lived, and what we valued. Finally, as we peer into these ancient vessels and chutes, we encounter a profound intimacy with the past. Chamber pots and garderobes, so ordinary in their time, now serve as portals into medieval life. They offer lessons in ingenuity, resilience, and human curiosity. They challenge our modern assumptions, surprise us with their ingenuity, and reveal the universality of human experience. And as you drift deeper into this exploration, allow yourself to imagine the cool stone of a castle wall, the wooden planks of a privy, the faint aroma of herbs and earth, and the quiet daily rituals of people who lived centuries before you. In these moments, the past becomes vivid, tangible, and unexpectedly close. From humble chamber pots to the engineered garderobes of imposing castles, the origins of medieval toilets reveal a fascinating intersection of necessity, invention, and culture. They teach us that even the most private acts are worthy of attention and reflection. And as we continue our journey into the more shocking discoveries hidden in medieval toilets, let us carry with us the understanding that these spaces, often overlooked and dismissed, are in fact treasures of human history, silent yet eloquent witnesses to lives long past. Imagine standing at the edge of a carefully excavated pit, the soil around you layered like the pages of a history book. This is not an ordinary pile of dirt. This is a medieval latrine, long forgotten yet astonishingly preserved. Archaeologists approach these sites with a mix of curiosity, patience, and precision. Every layer, every fragment, every particle tells a story. And here, in the quiet, undisturbed remains of human waste, lies a wealth of information that no grand hall or written document could ever reveal. The study of human waste, or coprolites when fossilized, is a meticulous science. Through careful analysis, researchers can uncover details about diet, health, lifestyle, and even trade. Consider the traces of grains, herbs, or animal bones embedded in waste deposits. Each fragment speaks volumes. The wheat, or barley, indicates staple foods. Fragments of fish or poultry hint at dietary preferences and seasonal availability. Seeds of exotic spices reveal connections to distant lands and trade routes. In essence, a simple piece of medieval waste becomes a key to understanding what people ate, how they lived, and how their societies functioned. Equally fascinating are the parasites and microscopic organisms preserved in these deposits. Scientists examining latrine contents can detect evidence of intestinal worms, bacteria, and other pathogens. This provides insight into the prevalence of disease, patterns of malnutrition, and overall public health in medieval communities. Imagine peering through a microscope, watching the tiny remnants of life that once thrived inside people long ago. These discoveries are both humbling and extraordinary, connecting us intimately with human experience centuries before our time. The methods used to study medieval toilets are as detailed and careful as the discoveries themselves. Excavation is slow and deliberate, often using small tools to ensure that no fragment is disturbed. Soil samples are taken layer by layer, catalogued meticulously, and analyzed in laboratories where modern technology reveals secrets invisible to the naked eye. Radiocarbon dating allows researchers to determine the age of deposits. Chemical analysis identifies dietary elements. Microscopic examination uncovers parasites and microbial life. Each technique adds depth to the story, allowing historians and scientists to reconstruct life in vivid detail. One of the most remarkable aspects of this work is the way it bridges past and present. Modern archaeologists are able to infer social structures, dietary habits, and even cultural practices from these humble deposits. For example, a latrine containing remains of expensive spices or imported foods might suggest that a castle or household had access to wealth and trade networks. Conversely, the predominance of coarse grains, root vegetables, and remnants of small domestic animals may reveal the austere diet of peasants. In this way, waste becomes a mirror of society, reflecting the inequalities, privileges, and realities of life in medieval times. Beyond diet and health, latrine analysis reveals unexpected insights into daily habits and human behavior. Tiny artifacts, coins, jewelry, or small objects, accidentally dropped into pits, provide glimpses of the lives of the people who used these facilities. Archaeologists have uncovered keys, buttons, and even scraps of fabric, each telling a story of a moment frozen in time. These discoveries, often surprising, demonstrate that toilets were not only practical necessities, but also stages upon which countless small dramas played out, unnoticed by the wider world. The chemical composition of medieval waste also opens windows into practices surrounding hygiene and medicine. Traces of medicinal herbs like mint, sage, or wormwood reveal attempts to maintain health, soothe discomfort, or ward off disease. Analysis of these substances shows a sophisticated understanding of the natural world, even if guided by trial, error, and tradition, rather than modern science. Imagine the care with which medieval people selected herbs, grinding them into powders, or steeping them into teas, their knowledge handed down through generations, and their presence silently preserved in the deposits left behind. Furthermore, archaeologists use comparative analysis to understand how sanitation practices varied across regions and social classes. In castles, latrines were often more sophisticated, sometimes equipped with flowing water or deep chutes to reduce contamination. In villages, privies were simpler and more rudimentary, reflecting the constraints of space, resources, and infrastructure. By comparing these sites, researchers can trace patterns of urban planning, health management, and the social importance of sanitation. Each discovery adds another brushstroke to the larger picture of medieval life, revealing both ingenuity and limitation. The study of medieval toilets also challenges modern assumptions about hygiene and sanitation. It is tempting to imagine the past as uniformly dirty, primitive, or unsanitary. Yet, through careful analysis, we see evidence of thoughtful design, adaptive practices, and remarkable innovation. Even in the absence of modern plumbing, medieval people devised solutions to manage waste, reduce contamination, and maintain some degree of privacy and comfort. This balance between necessity and creativity reflects a deeply human response to the universal challenge of managing our environment and bodies. Consider the emotional resonance of these discoveries. The quiet, patient work of archaeologists in dark, often musty latrines connects us directly with people from centuries ago. There is a profound intimacy in studying their waste, for it carries evidence of the most personal aspects of life: what they ate, what ailments they endured, and even how they coped with discomfort. It reminds us that the people of the past were complex, resourceful, and deeply human, navigating daily challenges with intelligence, humor, and resilience. The revelations from latrines extend beyond curiosity. They have practical implications for modern science as well. Studies of ancient parasites and pathogens inform contemporary medicine, offering clues about the evolution of diseases and human adaptation. By understanding the conditions under which diseases thrived, scientists gain insight into the relationship between environment, hygiene, and health. In this way, medieval toilets are not relics of a distant past, but living sources of knowledge, teaching lessons that continue to resonate today. Finally, these scientific explorations illuminate the unexpected poetry of life itself. In deposits once considered waste, we find stories of survival, ingenuity, and humanity. Each fragment, whether a morsel of food, a tiny coin, or a trace of a medicinal herb, tells a story that transcends time. It is in these hidden corners that history speaks most vividly, reminding us that even the most ordinary aspects of life carry meaning, and even the smallest objects can connect us profoundly with those who came before. As you imagine the careful hands of archaeologists sifting through soil, measuring samples, and examining microscopic evidence, allow yourself to feel the quiet wonder of discovery. Picture the past revealing itself layer by layer, and know that in these hidden, unglamorous places lie the most intimate truths of human existence. From diet to disease, from superstition to daily habit, medieval toilets offer an unparalleled view into the lives of people long gone. And as you drift deeper into sleep, let this gentle, fascinating knowledge settle around you, bridging centuries with calm curiosity and subtle awe. Through the lens of archaeology, we see medieval toilets not as mere receptacles of waste, but as repositories of life itself. They are chronicles in soil, capturing the textures, tastes, and struggles of a bygone era. And as our journey continues, we will uncover even more astonishing discoveries, the shocking objects, the hidden diseases, and the peculiar habits that bring the past vividly to life, quietly reminding us that every human experience, no matter how humble, is worth exploring and understanding. Imagine walking through the dimly lit corridors of a medieval castle, where stone walls rise thick and cold, carrying the echoes of centuries past. The halls are silent, save for the distant crackle of a hearth, or the occasional drip of water from high, unseen gutters. Hidden within these walls, tucked away from the eyes of visitors, and even many residents, lie the castle latrines, spaces both ordinary and extraordinary, practical yet imbued with a quiet symbolism. These thrones, simple yet ingeniously placed, reveal more about power, privacy, and daily life than any grand hall or ceremonial chamber ever could. A castle latrine, often called a garderobe, was typically a small chamber projecting from the main walls, sometimes overhanging a moat or a deep pit. From the outside, it might appear insignificant, just a narrow window or a modest extension of stone, yet within, it was a carefully designed space intended to remove waste from living quarters while ensuring some degree of comfort and privacy. Imagine stepping into such a chamber, the cool stone beneath your feet, the faint draft whispering through narrow openings, the muted echoes of voices carried from distant rooms. The air is tinged with both earthy scent and the faintest traces of herbs placed for odor or health, and the walls are smooth, worn by the touch of generations. The placement of garderobes was often strategic. Some overlooked the castle moat, where flowing water carried waste away, blending practicality with subtle theatrics. Others were positioned over deep chutes that emptied into courtyards or cellars below, ensuring that the evidence of daily life was discreetly removed from the main halls. These design choices reflect a surprising attention to both hygiene and symbolism. In a world where status and control were constantly displayed, even toilets could assert power. A well-placed latrine demonstrated the Lord's ability to maintain order, manage resources, and impose control over every aspect of castle life, including the most private human needs. The construction of castle latrines varied widely. In some castles, wooden seats were installed, sometimes simple and utilitarian, other times carefully carved and fitted to stone foundations. In wealthier castles, stone seats and sophisticated ventilation shafts allowed for a slightly more comfortable experience. Imagine the attention to detail, the angle of the seat, the placement of a small ledge for resting one's feet, even the gentle draft designed to carry away unpleasant smells. These were not merely functional spaces, they were carefully thought-out solutions to an age-old problem, blending engineering, architecture, and a subtle understanding of human behavior. Privacy, of course, was a key consideration. Even in grand castles, where public ceremonies and gatherings dominated much of daily life, the latrine offered a rare moment of solitude. Imagine a lord or lady pausing behind the stone walls, the distant sounds of the castle fading, the draft carrying a whisper of the outdoors. In these brief moments, social hierarchies softened, and the universal needs of the human body reminded all occupants, regardless of rank, of their shared humanity. It is in this quiet, hidden space that the contrast between power and vulnerability becomes most apparent, a reminder that even the mightiest rulers were bound by nature's demands. Castle latrines were not without their challenges. Maintaining them required effort and attention. In colder months, drafts could be biting, and odors could linger despite careful ventilation or the placement of herbs. Servants often played a crucial role, emptying pits, cleaning seats, and ensuring that the space remained functional and discreet. Imagine the quiet diligence of these workers, moving carefully in the shadows, preserving the comfort and dignity of their masters. The labor behind these seemingly simple rooms underscores the complex interplay of status, service, and daily life in a castle. Yet despite their practicality, castle latrines also carried a touch of the unexpected. Archaeologists have discovered a surprising variety of objects hidden within garderobe shafts: lost coins, small personal items, scraps of fabric, and even tiny toys. These finds suggest moments of distraction, accident, or deliberate disposal, and each item tells a story. Picture a coin slipping from a merchant's hand during a hurried visit, or a child's small toy lost to the deep shaft, resting quietly for centuries before being rediscovered. Such discoveries transform the latrine from a mere functional space into a silent archive of human life, rich with drama, curiosity, and often humor. The latrine also reflected the rhythms of castle life. Unlike the predictable routine of village privies, the castle garderobe had to accommodate a dynamic household, guests arriving unexpectedly, lords and ladies maintaining complex schedules, and servants moving quietly to attend their masters. Each person adapted to the space, leaving traces both literal and symbolic. Imagine the anticipation of a guest navigating narrow corridors to reach the latrine, the faint echo of footsteps, the careful attention to privacy and propriety. The latrine, though hidden, was an integral part of the daily choreography of castle life, subtly shaping interactions and routines. Interestingly, these spaces also provide insight into medieval attitudes toward cleanliness and health. While lacking modern plumbing, builders often understood the importance of separating living spaces from waste. Chutes and pits were designed to reduce contamination, ventilation shafts to manage odors. Herbs and plants were sometimes placed in the chamber to mask smells or provide mild antiseptic effects. The integration of practical design with rudimentary hygiene practices reveals a sophisticated understanding of environmental management and human comfort, even if expressed through the limited technology of the time. Castle latrines also illuminate the interplay of superstition and ritual. Some nobles believed that certain herbs could protect them from disease or evil spirits. While using the latrine, small charms or coins might be placed intentionally, either as offerings or to ensure good fortune. These practices, subtle and often invisible, demonstrate that even private spaces were influenced by cultural beliefs and anxieties. Imagine the quiet concentration, the small gestures intended to maintain health or luck, and the connection between physical need and spiritual mindfulness. Finally, the study of castle latrines provides a rare intimacy with the past. Standing in the shadow of a garderobe, we glimpse the lives of people who lived centuries ago, their ingenuity, their humor, their vulnerabilities. Each stone, each chute, each lost coin becomes a testament to human experience, revealing the ordinary and extraordinary aspects of medieval life. These hidden thrones, often overlooked in historical accounts, carry stories of survival, adaptation, and daily ritual. They remind us that even in the grandeur of castles, the simplest acts were essential, shaping the rhythms of life and the texture of history. As we reflect on these spaces, allow yourself to imagine the quiet drama of a castle at night, the wind whistling along stone corridors, the faint creak of wood beneath careful footsteps, the subtle sense of herbs and earth mingling in the air. Picture the lords, ladies, and servants moving through their routines, each moment shaped by the hidden presence of the latrine. In this quiet reflection, the castle latrine becomes more than a functional necessity. It is a window into medieval life, a mirror reflecting social hierarchy, innovation, and the intimate realities of human existence. The castle latrine, in its simplicity and ingenuity, teaches us a profound lesson. Even the most private spaces are rich with history, meaning, and human connection. From the design of stone seats to the placement of chutes, from the labor of servants to the accidental treasures lost by their masters, these rooms embody the intersection of necessity, ingenuity, and daily life. And as we continue our exploration into the more common spaces of medieval sanitation, The lessons of the castle latrine will guide us, illuminating the continuity of human experience, the creativity in the face of necessity, and the surprising depth hidden within even the most ordinary of spaces. Imagine wandering through the narrow, winding streets of a medieval village, just as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. The cottages, made of timber and thatch, lean toward one another as if sharing whispered secrets. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, carrying the scent of baked bread and roasting meat, while the distant bleating of sheep and the lowing of cattle remind you of the village's rhythm. Yet, amid these familiar sounds and sights, there is another layer to life, less visible, often overlooked, and yet essential: the village privy, the public toilet, and the ways in which communities manage the inevitable necessities of human existence. Unlike the castle garderobe, village toilets were humble, functional, and communal. A privy might be little more than a wooden hut, perched over a pit, situated behind a cottage, or at the edge of a lane. The structure was simple, sometimes no more than 4 walls, a bench with a hole, and a small roof for protection. Despite its simplicity, it was a carefully considered solution. The pit beneath allowed waste to collect safely, while the wooden enclosure provided a measure of privacy. Imagine stepping into one of these huts. Public latrines in towns and villages were often even more communal, reflecting both necessity and social organization. In bustling marketplaces or near the town square, shared facilities were established, sometimes as simple pits or trenches, covered with wooden planks. Villagers, regardless of status, might queue or take turns, navigating a delicate balance between convenience and decorum. These spaces were essential for daily life, providing a practical solution to the realities of density, limited space, and the ever-present concern of sanitation. Imagine the subtle choreography of villagers moving in and out with quiet discretion, each aware of their neighbors and the rhythms of communal life. Hygiene, though primitive by modern standards, was not absent. In some villages, straw or rushes lined the benches to provide comfort and absorb moisture. Herbs, such as lavender or mint, might be scattered to mask odors, and water could be poured into pits to aid decomposition. The villagers' methods reflect both practical observation and inherited tradition. They understood, through trial and experience, that waste had to be managed carefully to prevent disease and maintain a livable environment. In this we see an early form of public health, rooted not in scientific theory, but in daily observation and common sense. The location of privies was also critical, often placed at the edge of property, downhill from living quarters, or near a stream. They minimized contamination and facilitated removal. In towns, latrines were sometimes aligned along streets or alleys, forming a network of shared facilities that balanced accessibility with sanitation. Imagine walking along one of these streets, aware of the faint scents and sounds that tell you where life's necessities are managed, yet also observing the care with which villagers approached these spaces. The placement and design of these humble structures speak volumes about medieval pragmatism and community organization. Interestingly, village toilets also reveal much about social interactions and hierarchy. While everyone shared the same basic facilities, subtle distinctions could emerge. Wealthier villages might have private huts or better-maintained pits, while poorer households relied on communal solutions. Gender considerations were also evident. Some latrines were designated for men or women, or built with features to provide greater privacy. These arrangements, though simple, offer a window into the values, norms, and daily routines of medieval life. Imagine the quiet negotiations, the unspoken rules, and the careful observation required to maintain order in such shared spaces. The objects and traces left behind in village toilets tell stories just as vivid as those found in castles. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of pottery, animal bones, seeds, and even small personal items. Each piece offers insight into diet, economy, and lifestyle. Bits of grain suggest staple foods, remnants of vegetables hint at seasonal harvests, and traces of herbs indicate attempts at medicinal or hygienic practices. These discoveries, preserved in the unique environment of the privy, provide an intimate portrait of life that written records often overlook. Imagine sifting through these layers, uncovering the tiny remnants of a child's snack, a mother's careful preparation of food, or a villager's simple daily ritual, and suddenly, the past feels remarkably alive. Village toilets were not without their challenges. Odor, pests, and the risk of overflow were constant concerns. Maintenance fell to the occupants, or sometimes, the local authorities, and diligence was required to prevent unsanitary conditions. During rainy seasons, pits could flood, and in winter, frozen exteriors made access difficult. Yet despite these difficulties, communities adapted, routines developed, tools and methods improved, and knowledge was passed down through generations. The humble privy became a testament to human resilience, ingenuity, and the capacity to manage the necessities of life with limited resources. Public latrines in more densely populated towns sometimes became centers of social interaction, albeit in subtle ways. Villagers might exchange news, gossip, or observations while maintaining the decorum required by proximity. In this, even the most private of acts carried a social dimension, reinforcing connections and shared norms within the community. Imagine the quiet exchange of words over a wooden plank, the laughter restrained yet present, and the delicate balance between privacy and communal living. These moments, fleeting and mundane, shaped the social fabric in ways that are only now coming into focus through archaeological and historical study. The study of village toilets also illuminates diet and resource management. Traces of food, herbs, and small animal bones reveal not only what people ate, but also how they stored, prepared, and shared resources. The presence of certain seeds or grains can indicate trade networks or seasonal variations, while animal remains suggest livestock practices and consumption patterns. Each discovery deepens our understanding of daily life, revealing patterns of survival, creativity, and adaptation that are both practical and profoundly human. Moreover, village privies reflect the intersection of hygiene, superstition, and tradition. In some communities, small rituals accompanied the use of toilets, herbs placed for health, coins offered for luck, or charms hung discreetly nearby. These practices illustrate how the practical and the spiritual often intertwined, revealing a worldview in which health, fortune, and human action were closely connected. Imagine the care with which a villager might sprinkle herbs, whisper a small prayer, or adjust a coin, blending necessity with belief in ways that are at once practical and symbolic. As we consider these spaces, it becomes clear that village toilets, though modest, are rich with historical insight. They tell stories of daily life, of adaptation to environment and circumstance, and of the subtle ways humans negotiated privacy, hygiene, and community. From the humblest pit to a small wooden hut, each structure embodies lessons in resilience, social organization, and creativity. And as you imagine the quiet village streets at dusk, the faint sense of earth and herbs mingling in the air, and the gentle rhythms of daily routines, you begin to understand the depth and complexity hidden in these ordinary spaces. Village privies and public toilets, then, are more than mere utilitarian structures. They are archives of human experience, preserving traces of diet, health, habit, and social interaction. They remind us that even the simplest actions, seating, excreting, sharing space, carry meaning and leave behind evidence that can bridge centuries. In their quiet way, these toilets offer a window into medieval life, showing us the ingenuity, adaptability, and humanity of people who lived long before us. In the stillness of the village night, let yourself imagine these scenes fully: the faint creak of a wooden plank, the soft rustle of herbs, the hushed voices of neighbors, and the quiet diligence of villagers attending to their daily routines. In these ordinary moments lie extraordinary insights, stories waiting to be discovered, and lessons about resilience, community, and the persistence of human ingenuity. Through the lens of village toilets, we gain a remarkable perspective on life in close quarters, understanding that even in the humblest settings, history is alive, tangible, and deeply human. Imagine leaning over a narrow excavation trench, the air filled with the faint, earthy scent of centuries-old soil. What appears at first glance to be merely dirt is in reality a vault of history, a medieval latrine untouched for hundreds of years. As archaeologists carefully brush away layers, the unexpected begins to emerge. Bones, coins, jewelry, fragments of pottery, and curious objects, once lost or deliberately discarded, come into view. Each item tells a story, not just of daily life, but of moments of accident, ritual, and human curiosity. These shocking finds, preserved in the depths of toilets and privies, offer a window into the hidden, intimate world of medieval people. Bones are among the most common and startling discoveries. Often they belong to small animals, chickens, pigs, or occasionally fish, revealing not only diet, but also local farming practices and culinary habits. But sometimes human bones appear, small fragments of forgotten tragedy, accidental disposal, or perhaps even overlooked burials. Archaeologists interpret these finds with care, reconstructing the lives, health, and circumstances of people long gone. Imagine the slow revelation of a tiny fragment of femur or a tooth, a silent witness to the intimate, often overlooked aspects of life. In these remnants, we glimpse mortality and survival, nourishment and necessity, the duality of life and death intertwined in the simplest of places. Coins are another frequent and fascinating discovery. Often dropped by accident, sometimes intentionally discarded, they provide clues about trade, economy, and social practices. A silver penny, lost to a deep pit, could suggest the presence of a merchant, a guest, or a child exploring the edges of curiosity. Imagine the weight of history in that tiny worn disc, stamped with an image of a monarch, touched by countless hands, now resting quietly at the bottom of a latrine. Each coin offers insight into the interconnected world of medieval commerce, revealing the flow of money, power, and daily transactions, long before modern banking existed. Yet it is the oddities that truly capture the imagination. Archaeologists have uncovered fragments of shoes, keys, jewelry, combs, small toys, and even personal letters, all carefully hidden in pits or accidentally dropped. These discoveries transform toilets from utilitarian structures into private archives of human behavior. Consider a small toy, accidentally lost by a child centuries ago, a silver ring dropped by a distracted visitor, or a key that once secured a precious chest. These items tell stories of daily life, small dramas, and moments of human vulnerability. The very ordinariness of these objects makes them extraordinary, revealing the personal and intimate dimensions of medieval life in vivid detail. The diversity of finds also reflects social status. In wealthier households or castles, archaeologists often uncover expensive jewelry, coins of precious metal, and even fragments of imported pottery. These items indicate access to trade networks, wealth, and the means to maintain privacy and comfort. Conversely, in village latrines, the finds are often simpler: clay fragments, small iron implements, or bones of domesticated animals, reflecting the modest daily life of ordinary people. Imagine the contrast: a carved stone seat overlooking a moat, beneath which lies a silver coin, versus a simple wooden privy in a village, concealing fragments of pottery and tiny bones. Each site, rich with detail, reveals the interplay of wealth, status, and human behavior, in ways both subtle and profound. Some finds are outright shocking because they defy expectation. Archaeologists have discovered charms, religious icons, and even protective amulets placed intentionally in latrine shafts. These objects hint at superstition, spiritual belief, or ritualistic practice. Imagine a small cross or carved figure, dropped carefully into the pit, intended to ward off disease, protect the household, or bring luck. In this quiet, hidden space, spiritual and practical concerns converge, demonstrating the multifaceted nature of medieval life. Even the most private acts were guided by belief, blending necessity with a subtle spiritual awareness. Bones and artifacts can also reveal surprising medical or cultural insights. Traces of medicinal herbs, fragments of teeth, and even evidence of injuries suggest practices of healing, diet, and adaptation to illness. Archaeologists have uncovered remnants of herbal remedies mixed with waste, pointing to attempts at self-medication or domestic healing. Picture a fragment of wormwood or mint, perhaps used to soothe an upset stomach, now preserved for centuries in the latrine's pit. These discoveries show that health, diet, and hygiene were intimately connected, and that even in the humblest or most overlooked spaces, medieval people sought solutions to the challenges of the body and environment. Animal bones provide another layer of information. Chickens, pigs, and fish bones reveal diet and food preparation, while occasional fragments of wild animals indicate hunting or seasonal scarcity. Analysis of these remains shows patterns of consumption, social differentiation, and even ritual practice. Imagine the meticulous sorting of tiny fragments, identifying each species, reconstructing meals eaten long ago, and understanding the rhythms of medieval life from the bones that survive. The depth of insight gained from these modest remnants is extraordinary, turning what might seem mundane into a rich tapestry of historical knowledge. Even items that seem trivial offer profound stories. A tiny comb fragment reveals attention to grooming and appearance, a button fragment hints at clothing styles, and a piece of pottery shows domestic practices. Each discovery illuminates aspects of daily life that texts and chronicles rarely capture. Picture the daily routines unfolding quietly around the latrine, a villager adjusting a cloak, a child playing near the privy, a servant carefully emptying a pit, all actions now reconstructed through the careful analysis of material evidence. The intimate, everyday moments of life, often unnoticed in grand historical narratives, are preserved here in vivid detail. The arrangement and condition of finds also provide clues. Objects found intact suggest careful placement, while fragmented items indicate accidental loss or disposal. Coins found in clusters might suggest communal rituals or inadvertent dropping, while singular items often point to private acts. Archaeologists interpret these patterns to reconstruct not only physical environments, but also human behavior and social norms. Imagine piecing together these tiny clues, layer by layer, to reveal stories of curiosity, carelessness, and intention, each one adding depth and richness to our understanding of medieval life. Perhaps most astonishing is the sheer variety of what is preserved. From bones to coins, from toys to charms, the latrine becomes a silent archive of centuries. These discoveries challenge modern assumptions about medieval life, revealing that even private, unglamorous spaces were rich with meaning, innovation, and human expression. The latrine, once dismissed as merely functional or repulsive, emerges as a treasure trove of insight, bridging the gap between the personal and the historical, the mundane and the extraordinary. Archaeologists' work also highlights the fragility and resilience of these finds. Time, water, and decay threaten preservation, yet the unique conditions of latrines, often anaerobic pits or deep chutes, helped protect delicate materials. Organic matter, coins, and artifacts survived, offering a window into lives long past. Imagine the thrill of discovery as a perfectly preserved item emerges from centuries of soil, carrying with it stories that had been silent for generations. Each find is a testament to the endurance of human history, quietly waiting to be rediscovered. Finally, these shocking finds remind us of the universality of human experience. Bones, coins, toys, and charms are not merely objects, they are the traces of curiosity, error, creativity, and daily ritual. They connect us with people who lived, laughed, struggled, and hoped centuries ago. Standing at the edge of a latrine pit, observing these remnants, one feels a profound sense of connection to the past. The same small joys, mistakes, and necessities that define human life today were shared by those who came before. The latrine then transforms from a place of waste into a repository of human stories. Its shocking finds, bones, coins, and oddities, reveal the richness, complexity, and intimacy of medieval life. Each discovery adds texture to our understanding, reminding us that even the most unassuming spaces can hold profound historical significance. And as we drift deeper into this exploration, the latent drama, mystery, and ingenuity preserved in medieval toilets continue to unfold, offering lessons, surprises, and insights that quietly shape our view of the past. Imagine the quiet corners of a medieval village, where narrow alleys wind between timbered cottages, and the daily hum of life masks hidden dangers. Beneath the surface, in the privies and latrines that serve every household, lurk the invisible traces of disease and parasites, remnants of the microscopic battles that shaped human survival. These were not merely unpleasant byproducts of daily life. They were a constant, silent threat, influencing diet, hygiene, mortality, and the rhythm of community life. Understanding this dark side of medieval toilets requires both imagination and scientific rigor as we explore the intimate connection between human behavior, sanitation, and health in centuries past. Parasites were among the most common occupants of medieval latrines. Traces of roundworms, tapeworms, and other intestinal invaders are frequently found in preserved waste. These organisms thrived in conditions created by close living quarters, poor sanitation, and the absence of modern sewage systems. Imagine a bustling village street, where people, livestock, and waste coexist in proximity, creating ideal conditions for the spread of disease. For the inhabitants, parasitic infections were often an invisible burden, causing fatigue, malnutrition, and long-term health problems. The discovery of these parasites in archaeological contexts allows scientists to reconstruct patterns of illness and understand how medieval communities coped with invisible, persistent threats. Bacterial infections also left their mark. While modern antibiotics were unknown, traces of cholera, dysentery, and typhoid can be inferred from latrine analysis. Outbreaks of gastrointestinal illness were likely frequent, yet largely undocumented in written records, unless particularly severe. Imagine villagers moving cautiously through narrow streets after heavy rains, aware that stagnant water and overflowing pits could carry unseen dangers. These hazards were part of daily life, silently shaping the routines, choices, and resilience of communities. Hygiene, while basic, became a vital and practical concern, often guided by tradition and observation rather than scientific understanding. The design of toilets influenced disease transmission. In villages, pits and trenches were often uncovered or inadequately separated from living areas. This allowed parasites and bacteria to move easily between humans and the environment, perpetuating cycles of infection. In castles, while garderobes were better designed, the concentration of people and the challenges of waste management still created opportunities for disease. Imagine a bustling great hall, servants moving quietly, children playing nearby, and waste chutes running just beyond the walls, unseen, yet exerting a subtle influence on health and daily life. These spaces, though hidden, were central to the experience of illness, recovery, and survival. The analysis of medieval waste also reveals patterns of nutrition and vulnerability. Parasites often thrived in populations with limited protein intake or irregular access to fresh food. Nutritional deficiencies weakened immune systems, making infections more severe. Traces of grains, vegetables, and animal remains in latrines help archaeologists reconstruct diet, while evidence of parasites illustrates the physiological challenges faced by medieval people. Imagine a villager subsisting on coarse bread, seasonal vegetables, and occasional meat, all while battling invisible invaders in the digestive system. The interplay of diet, hygiene, and infection paints a vivid picture of resilience and adaptation under challenging circumstances. Hygiene practices, though rudimentary, were often surprisingly thoughtful. Herbs such as mint, sage, or wormwood were sometimes used to mask odors or provide mild antiseptic effects. Water might be poured into pits to encourage decomposition, and designated latrine areas helped minimize contamination of living quarters. Imagine a careful housewife tending to a privy, placing sprigs of herbs, or pouring water with deliberate attention, guided by knowledge passed down through generations. These small actions, though simple, demonstrate a deep practical understanding of disease prevention, long before germ theory was known. The dark side of medieval toilets also extends to social and psychological dimensions. The constant awareness of disease, the need for careful waste disposal, and the management of odors created subtle pressures on behavior. People adapted routines, observed one another, and sometimes developed informal rules for shared spaces. Imagine the quiet negotiation among villagers waiting their turn, balancing privacy, practicality, and hygiene. These interactions, though understated, reveal how health concerns influence social organization and daily conduct, reinforcing norms and community cohesion. Archaeological findings also illuminate the persistence of long-term health effects. Parasites and infections could cause chronic conditions, impacting growth, fertility, and overall well-being. Children were particularly vulnerable, and mortality rates reflected the invisible burden of disease. Imagine the careful observation of skeletal remains, noting signs of anemia, malnutrition, or stunted growth, while microscopic analysis of preserved waste reveals the agents behind these conditions. Each discovery deepens our understanding of the challenges faced by medieval populations and the strategies they employed to survive. Some surprising practices emerge from latrine studies. Evidence of medicinal herbs, mixed with waste, suggests attempts to treat infection or digestive distress. People may have chewed or ingested certain plants, hoping to alleviate symptoms or prevent illness. Imagine the quiet diligence of a villager grinding herbs, mixing them into teas or powders, and relying on tradition and observation to guide treatment. These practices, preserved in the chemical and biological record, reveal a nuanced understanding of human health, blending practicality, belief, and trial-and-error experimentation. The spatial arrangement of latrines also affected disease spread. Proximity to water sources, living areas, or communal spaces could amplify risks, while strategic placement helped mitigate them. Archaeologists reconstruct these relationships by mapping latrine locations, analyzing soil composition, and studying patterns of use. Imagine a village planner intuitively balancing convenience with safety, or a castle architect positioning garderobes over flowing water. These decisions, often unnoticed in historical texts, played a critical role in health outcomes and reflect an early form of environmental management. The emotional resonance of these findings is profound. As we learn about the invisible threats that shape daily life, we gain empathy for people who lived with constant silent pressures. The presence of parasites, bacteria, and poorly managed waste was not merely an inconvenience. It influenced life expectancy, family planning, and community stability. Imagine walking through a medieval village with this knowledge, seeing ordinary streets and cottages transformed in your mind into spaces where every step, every interaction, and every choice carried subtle consequences for health and survival. These discoveries also challenge modern assumptions about the past. It is easy to imagine medieval life as quaint or romantic, yet the study of toilets reveals the harsh realities underlying daily routines. Disease was pervasive, hygiene was a constant concern, and survival required ingenuity, cooperation, and observation. At the same time, these challenges inspired creativity. Strategic latrine placement, use of herbs, and community norms demonstrate adaptive solutions to persistent problems. Imagine the quiet triumph of a village successfully managing waste, reducing the spread of parasites, and sustaining health despite limited technology, a testament to human resilience across centuries. Finally, the study of diseases, parasites and hygiene in medieval toilets offers lessons that extend beyond history. It reminds us of the intimate connection between environment, behavior, and health, highlighting the ways humans have long navigated invisible threats. Each latrine, privy and pit becomes more than a historical curiosity. It is a site of insight, empathy, and understanding, linking past and present in a continuum of human experience. As we reflect on these hidden corners of medieval life, we gain a deeper appreciation for the resilience, creativity, and care with which people faced the everyday challenges of existence. In the quiet contemplation of these discoveries, allow yourself to imagine the faint traces of life preserved in soil, the microscopic inhabitants, the careful placement of herbs, the routines shaped by necessity and observation. Picture the village and castle alike, where humans negotiated privacy, hygiene, and health with quiet diligence and subtle ingenuity. Through this lens, medieval toilets reveal not only the dark side of life, but also the remarkable adaptability and resourcefulness that define the human experience. Each pit, each sample, each trace of disease becomes a story, whispering across centuries, connecting us intimately with those who lived, suffered, and thrived long before our time. Picture a quiet medieval village at dusk, the streets emptying as families retreat to their homes, lanterns flickering in timbered windows. Within these homes, in the shadowed privacy of a privy or castle garderobe. The ordinary act of using the toilet was often intertwined with extraordinary beliefs. Far from being mere functional spaces, latrines carried an invisible layer of superstition, ritual, and the hope for protection against misfortune. Charms, amulets, and small gestures of magic were woven seamlessly into daily life, reflecting a worldview in which the spiritual and physical were deeply connected. One of the most intriguing practices was the placement of charms in latrine pits. Tiny crosses, coins, carved figures, or inscribed tokens might be deliberately dropped into the waste pit. These objects were thought to ward off disease, protect households, or bring good luck. Imagine a medieval housewife pausing to drop a small silver charm into the privy, whispering a silent prayer for her children's health, for the prosperity of her home, or for protection against unseen spirits. In this private moment, the mundane act of using the toilet became a subtle ritual, blending necessity with belief in a quiet, almost meditative way. Some charms were protective in very specific ways. Coins or amulets might be placed to guard against particular diseases, believed to be linked to waste, or to prevent harmful spirits from lingering in the home. The presence of herbs, such as wormwood, sage, or rosemary, often served a dual purpose, masking odors and acting as a symbolic purifier. Imagine the gentle scent of these herbs filling the privy, a sensory reminder of both cleanliness and protection. The combination of tactile, visual, and olfactory elements transformed a simple latrine into a space charged with meaning, intention, and quiet spiritual presence. Beyond protective charms, there were also curses and symbolic acts. Some objects were deposited in latrines as deliberate misfortune for others. Small figurines representing enemies, coins placed to invoke ill luck, or notes inscribed with curses. These acts reflect the deeply human desire to influence fate and manage uncertainty, even through the most private and overlooked channels. Imagine the secrecy and tension of such an act, the careful placement of a cursed item, the quiet hope that it would carry power, and the unspoken belief that this small ritual could tip fortune in one's favor. The latrine in this sense becomes a stage for psychological drama as well as practical life. The intertwining of superstition and hygiene also highlights medieval understandings of health. Illness was often seen as a consequence of spiritual imbalance, moral failing, or malevolent forces. By placing charms or herbs in the toilet, people believed they could prevent disease from entering the home or affecting the family. Imagine a child's curiosity about these small rituals, observing their mother carefully arranging herbs, or a servant quietly carrying out the placement of protective tokens. Each action represents an intimate negotiation between belief, observation, and the invisible forces thought to shape daily life. Some practices were highly localized, varying from village to village or castle to castle. Archaeologists have found that certain amulets were common in one region, but absent in another, suggesting that superstition was deeply tied to community knowledge and tradition. Picture the subtle differences between a northern European village and a southern one, each with its own preferred symbols, rituals, and combinations of herbs or charms. These variations reveal how belief systems adapted to local culture, environment, and perceived threats, weaving a rich tapestry of spiritual practice across medieval Europe. The placement of charms in toilets also underscores the concept of liminality, the idea that these spaces, situated between private and public, clean and unclean, inside and outside, were uniquely powerful. A latrine was more than a functional necessity. It was a threshold between the ordinary world and the unseen forces believed to influence health, fortune, and fate. Imagine the quiet reverence with which someone approached a privy, not only as a space of hygiene, but as a place where spiritual protection could be enacted. The act of dropping a charm, even silently and privately, was a way to assert control over uncertainty and to engage with the unseen dimensions of life. These beliefs extended beyond households to communal spaces. Public latrines might include protective charms intended for general use, placed by the community or local authorities. The goal was to maintain health and ward off malevolent spirits that could spread through shared facilities. Imagine the careful placement of a small stone charm in a town privy, a communal act blending practicality with collective superstition. Even in the busiest public spaces, The unseen layers of belief provided comfort, order, and a sense of shared responsibility in a world where risk and uncertainty were ever present. The psychological effect of these rituals cannot be overstated. Even small charms or gestures likely offered reassurance, helping villagers and castle residents navigate daily life with a sense of agency. In spaces that were otherwise associated with vulnerability, the presence of protective objects allowed for a quiet empowerment. Imagine leaning over the simple wooden bench of a village privy, feeling the weight of centuries of superstition, and sensing that small acts of care, herbs, charms, or whispered prayers, could influence both fortune and well-being. These rituals bridged the physical and mental aspects of survival, intertwining belief with everyday necessity. Archaeological evidence reinforces the subtlety and creativity of these practices. Tiny charms are sometimes discovered alongside unexpected items, coins, toys, fragments of pottery, or even animal bones. Their placement within latrines suggests intention, awareness, and a desire to harness unseen forces. Imagine uncovering a small carved figure alongside the remnants of daily life, a silent testament to medieval ingenuity and spiritual engagement. Each find adds richness to our understanding, reminding us that even the most unassuming spaces were alive with meaning and purpose. Finally, the study of superstitions and beliefs in toilets offers a unique perspective on the medieval worldview. It reminds us that human beings have long sought to navigate uncertainty, protect themselves, and influence outcomes through creativity and ritual. In the quiet intimacy of a privy, we see the intersection of hygiene, spirituality, and psychology, a convergence that underscores the complexity and richness of everyday life. These small hidden acts, charms, amulets, herbs, speak to the universality of human hope, fear, and ingenuity. As we reflect on these practices, picture the dimly lit interiors of a castle garderobe or a village privy, the faint scent of herbs mingling with the earthy tang of soil, and the silent intention behind every dropped charm or coin. In this quiet, reflective space, mundane necessity transforms into ritual, belief intersects with daily routine, and history whispers through objects that have endured for centuries. Superstitions and charms in medieval toilets reveal a human desire to control the uncontrollable, to weave order from uncertainty, and to find meaning in even the most private acts of life. The next time you imagine a medieval latrine, let yourself see it not just as a place of waste, but as a sacred microcosm of belief, ingenuity, and human emotion, a space where the ordinary meets the extraordinary, and where small gestures resonate across centuries, connecting us to the hopes, fears, and quiet rituals of people who lived long before us. Imagine stepping into the shadowed corridors of a medieval castle, or wandering through a village where timbered cottages lean toward each other under the weight of centuries. Everywhere the necessities of life demanded creative solutions, and nowhere is human ingenuity more evident than in the architecture of latrines. These structures, often overlooked or dismissed as purely functional, reveal remarkable innovation, adaptation to environment, and subtle understanding of human needs. From the simplest village privy to the intricately engineered garderobe of a castle, latrine architecture demonstrates the intersection of practicality, engineering, and daily life. In castles, latrines were designed with remarkable attention to both privacy and sanitation. Often positioned along outer walls or over a moat, garderobes used gravity and flowing water to carry waste away from living areas. Imagine leaning over a stone seat, the chill of the wall beneath your hand as you peer down a narrow chute into the depths below. This architectural design minimized odors, prevented contamination of the main building, and reflected a sophisticated understanding of engineering principles. The placement of these toilets high above courtyards or over rivers allowed waste to be disposed of with minimal risk to inhabitants, showcasing practical ingenuity in a pre-modern context. The materials used in latrine construction also reveal ingenuity. Wood, stone, and sometimes brick were employed, depending on local resources, climate, and the intended permanence of the structure. Wooden seats, often reinforced and contoured, provided comfort, while stone chutes resisted decay and allowed for easier cleaning. Imagine the hands of a medieval carpenter or mason shaping these components, balancing durability with functionality, creating spaces that were at once utilitarian and subtly refined. Even the most modest village privy incorporated thoughtful design, ventilation holes, sloped floors, and strategically placed entrances reflected an understanding of hygiene and convenience. Village latrines, though simpler than castle garderobes, were no less ingenious in their adaptation to environment and resources. Pits were dug at safe distances from homes and water sources, sometimes lined with stone or timber to prevent collapse. Wooden benches were carefully crafted to fit available space, while straw or rushes provided comfort and absorbency. Imagine a village blacksmith shaping nails and hinges, or a carpenter fashioning a simple yet sturdy seat, each act a small but essential contribution to communal life. These solutions reflect practical observation and creativity, showing that innovation was not confined to elites, but present in every corner of medieval society. Communal latrines demonstrate another level of architectural problem-solving. In towns, long trough-like structures were sometimes built for multiple users, incorporating drainage channels, wooden covers, and seating arrangements that balanced privacy with efficiency. Imagine a bustling marketplace, where villagers quietly navigate the shared facilities, the careful layout of the latrine allowing multiple people to use the space without undue discomfort or conflict. These communal innovations highlight an early understanding of public health, ergonomics, and social organization, revealing how architecture served both physical and social needs. Some latrines incorporated surprisingly sophisticated features. In larger castles or monasteries, water channels, cisterns, or rudimentary flushing systems helped move waste away efficiently. Imagine the subtle engineering required to ensure adequate slope, prevent blockages, and maintain hygiene. Even without modern plumbing, these solutions demonstrate ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a careful understanding of environmental dynamics. Latrine design was not static. Builders learned from observation, adapting structures to changing needs, seasonal variations, and technological opportunities. The location of latrines also reflected strategic thinking. In castles, they were often tucked into corner towers, protruding slightly beyond the wall, or situated above rivers or moats. These positions leveraged gravity and flowing water to aid waste removal, while minimizing exposure to the main living spaces. Imagine peering over the edge of a tower, the river below carrying away waste unseen, allowing residents to maintain both hygiene and dignity. Such thoughtful placement shows that medieval architects considered not only functionality, but also the sensory experience, minimizing odor, noise, and intrusion. Ventilation was another key innovation. Cracks, small windows, and openings allowed odors to escape, while preserving privacy. In village privies, simple slits in wooden walls or gaps in the roof served the same purpose. Imagine the careful balancing act of creating airflow without sacrificing shelter, security, or comfort. Even in seemingly rudimentary structures, builders demonstrated a nuanced understanding of how air movement, light, and materials could enhance usability, subtly improving health outcomes and the overall experience of the space. Latrine architecture also adapted to climate and geography. In colder regions, seats might be partially enclosed or insulated with straw, while in warmer areas, ventilation was prioritized to reduce odor and flies. Rainwater drainage was carefully considered, especially in regions prone to flooding. Imagine a medieval builder surveying the landscape, aligning pits and channels to take advantage of natural slopes and water flow. This environmental sensitivity ensured that latrines were not merely functional but resilient, sustainable, and integrated seamlessly into the surrounding landscape. The integration of waste management into broader architectural planning was equally remarkable. Latrines were often connected to kitchens, baths, or other service areas, allowing for efficient disposal of both human and organic waste. In monasteries or larger estates, the output of latrines sometimes contributed to fertilization in gardens or fields, demonstrating an early form of resource recycling. Imagine the careful coordination required to align living spaces, water channels, and waste disposal systems, each component designed to optimize hygiene, comfort, and utility. This holistic approach underscores the sophistication of medieval thought in domestic and communal design. Even decorative elements were occasionally incorporated. In castles, stone seats might be carved with simple motifs, and wooden covers could feature craftsmanship that reflected local aesthetic traditions. Imagine the quiet artistry embedded in these functional spaces, where beauty and practicality coexist. Such details remind us that even in areas devoted to necessity, human creativity and pride found expression, making latrines not only functional, but subtly culturally significant. Maintenance was an integral part of architectural consideration. Access points for cleaning, removal of waste and repair of wooden seats or stone chutes were built into designs. Imagine servants quietly carrying out these tasks, sliding planks, cleaning pits, and ensuring that structures remained functional over decades. The durability of latrines depended not only on initial construction, but also on ongoing care, illustrating a long-term vision and understanding of material resilience. Finally, latrine architecture reflects broader themes of medieval life: adaptability, ingenuity, and the blending of practical and social concerns. From the humble village privy to the sophisticated castle garderobe, each structure embodies solutions to daily challenges, lessons in resourcefulness, and attention to human experience. Imagine walking through a medieval street or castle corridor, aware of the quiet engineering and thoughtful planning embedded in every corner, every seat, and every pit. These innovations transformed an ordinary necessity into a testament to human creativity and enduring problem-solving. Through the lens of latrine architecture, we see the subtle brilliance of medieval life. Even the simplest wooden bench or stone chute tells a story of observation, adaptation, and care. These structures remind us that human ingenuity often manifests where it is least expected, and that solutions to basic necessities can be both practical and ingenious. As we consider these spaces, we gain a richer appreciation for the daily lives of people long ago, their creativity, and the enduring impact of thoughtful design on health, comfort, and community life. Imagine walking through a medieval town, where the contrast between castle and cottage is visible, not only in size and materials, but also in the hidden infrastructure of daily life. Toilets, often overlooked, provide a fascinating lens through which to explore social hierarchy, wealth, and lifestyle. From the grandeur of a stone castle garderobe to the humble village privy, differences in design, sanitation, and privacy reveal much about the people who used them. These spaces, though ordinary in function, become extraordinary in what they tell us about medieval society, culture, and human ingenuity. In castles, latrines were carefully planned and built to serve multiple purposes: hygiene, privacy, and even defense. Positioned along outer walls or over moats, garderobes used gravity to remove waste efficiently. Imagine a great hall bustling with activity, servants and nobles moving about, while discreetly positioned latrines ensure that sanitation does not disrupt daily life. The stone seats, sometimes carved with simple patterns, provided durability and relative comfort. The contrast between the opulence of the main living spaces and the practical utility of the toilets illustrates the balance of luxury and necessity in aristocratic life. Castle toilets often included innovations absent in village privies. Flowing water from rivers or streams might be harnessed to carry away waste, reducing odors and minimizing disease risk. Some garderobes were connected to waste channels that emptied into moats, rivers, or cesspits far below. Imagine peering over a stone seat, the faint sound of rushing water below, carrying away centuries of use, a silent engineering triumph hidden from view. These systems reflect the resources, knowledge, and foresight available to the wealthy, providing a stark contrast to the simpler solutions employed in less affluent settings. By contrast, village cottages relied on simpler, often communal solutions. Wooden privies, sometimes no more than a bench over a pit, were constructed from local timber and modest materials. Imagine a narrow village alley, where small wooden structures lean toward each other, their design guided by practicality rather than comfort or aesthetics. Waste management relied on gravity, careful placement, and routine emptying or relocation of pits. These toilets fulfilled essential needs but lacked the engineering sophistication of castle garderobes. Yet, in their simplicity, they reveal resilience, adaptability, and the capacity of ordinary people to manage daily necessities under resource constraints. Social status shaped not only the design, but also the experience of using toilets. In castles, privacy was carefully maintained, with individual seats or small rooms providing discretion. In village cottages, or communal latrines, privacy was limited, often shared between family members or neighbors. Imagine the subtle negotiations of personal space, the awareness of others, and the adaptation of social norms to the realities of daily life. Even within humble dwellings, people exercised care and consideration, demonstrating that dignity and decorum were valued across classes, despite material limitations. Materials and construction methods also reflected class differences. Stone, brick, and mortar dominated castle garderobes, providing durability and resistance to decay. Wooden seats and benches were reinforced for longevity, while carved or shaped elements added subtle aesthetic touches. In cottages, timber, clay, and rushes formed the primary materials, creating functional but less durable spaces. Imagine a villager carefully repairing a wooden seat, or lining a pit with stones to prevent collapse. These choices, driven by availability and necessity, show ingenuity and resourcefulness, highlighting how social and economic factors influence the design of everyday life. Access to water further differentiated social classes. In castles, flowing water channels or nearby streams facilitated flushing and reduced odors, contributing to health and comfort. Villagers often relied on rainwater, manual emptying, or natural drainage, which increased exposure to odors and disease. Imagine a villager carefully managing a pit latrine, balancing hygiene with convenience, while nobles enjoy the silent efficiency of engineered waste removal. This contrast underscores the broader impact of social hierarchy on health, well-being, and quality of life. Despite differences, common threads unite these diverse experiences. Both castle and cottage latrines reveal attention to practical challenges, environmental adaptation, and human needs. Ventilation, strategic placement, and attention to material durability were present across social strata, albeit executed with differing resources. Imagine the quiet ingenuity present in both contexts: a villager lining a pit to prevent collapse, a castle engineer designing a chute to harness gravity. These acts demonstrate the universality of human problem-solving and the pursuit of comfort, hygiene, and efficiency, regardless of wealth or status. Communal practices also shaped toilet use. In villages, shared latrines required negotiation, etiquette, and routine maintenance. Responsibilities were divided, often according to age, gender, or social role. Imagine a group of villagers coordinating the emptying of a pit, reinforcing both practical and social cohesion. In castles, servants managed maintenance discreetly, ensuring privacy and functionality without disrupting noble life. Both scenarios reveal that toilet use was not only a matter of engineering, but also of social organization, reflecting values of cooperation, respect, and responsibility. Archaeological evidence enriches our understanding of these contrasts. Excavations reveal differences in the types of waste, presence of coins, personal items or protective charms, and variations in pit depth or construction quality. Castle latrines often contained more sophisticated materials, while village pits preserve organic traces that reveal diet, parasites, and daily life. Imagine piecing together these clues, layer by layer, to reconstruct the lived experience of people across classes. Each artifact, fragment, or structural remnant tells a story, illuminating the nuances of wealth, labor, and daily routine. Health implications also varied with social status. Nobles benefited from improved sanitation, reduced exposure to pathogens, and better access to hygiene practices. Villagers faced higher risks of parasitic infection and disease, yet adapted with local knowledge, herbs, and practical care. Imagine the quiet vigilance of families managing hygiene, balancing necessity with environmental constraints, and negotiating health risks with insight passed through generations. These practices reveal the resourcefulness and resilience of ordinary people, often overlooked in historical narratives. Finally, the comparison of toilets across social classes underscores broader themes of medieval life: adaptation, ingenuity, and the intersection of necessity with environment, resources, and culture. From the grandeur of a castle garderobe to the modest village privy, each structure embodies problem-solving, creativity, and the social realities of daily existence. Imagine walking through a medieval street, observing the subtle architecture, the careful placement, and the ingenuity embedded in every seat, every pit, and every channel. These ordinary spaces, when viewed through the lens of class, reveal extraordinary insights into human life, resilience, and creativity. Through this exploration, we see that medieval toilets were not merely functional, they were expressions of social hierarchy, practical ingenuity, and human adaptation. Castle and cottage, noble and commoner, differ in resources, materials, and experience, yet both reflect universal concerns: privacy, hygiene, and the subtle management of daily life. As we reflect on these contrasts, we gain a richer, more nuanced understanding of medieval society, connecting the ordinary act of using the toilet to broader patterns of class, culture, and survival. Imagine the quiet, shadowed corners of a medieval privy or castle garderobe, where centuries of daily life have left traces invisible to the casual observer. Beneath the surface of these functional spaces lies a hidden archive of human behavior, creativity, and sometimes sheer accident. Archaeologists, with patient hands and careful eyes, have unearthed an astonishing array of objects in these humble latrines: coins, toys, jewelry, and personal items that speak volumes about the people who lived, worked, and played in these spaces. Each artifact carries a story, revealing unexpected facets of medieval life, social values, and the intimate rhythms of daily existence. Coins are among the most common finds in latrines, and their presence is often both practical and symbolic. Sometimes lost accidentally, these coins were often deliberately dropped into pits as small offerings or charms. Imagine a villager absent-mindedly letting a coin slip through fingers into the darkness below, or a child secretly tossing a piece of currency as a token of hope or superstition. In some cases, coins were believed to protect against disease, bring luck, or symbolize gratitude. Each coin, preserved in soil for centuries, becomes a silent witness to everyday gestures, blending practicality, ritual, and human emotion. Toys, surprisingly, are also found in medieval latrines, providing poignant insights into the lives of children. Tiny figurines, miniature animals, and simple carved objects suggest moments of play, distraction, or even the inadvertent dropping of cherished items. Imagine a small child carefully arranging a toy animal on a wooden bench, only for it to tumble into the pit below, becoming part of the hidden record of childhood. These artifacts remind us that even in spaces associated with necessity or discomfort, the innocence, curiosity, and creativity of children persisted. Toys in latrines serve as intimate reminders that play, imagination, and the human need for amusement were integral to daily life, regardless of setting. Jewelry, from rings to pendants, sometimes finds its way into latrine pits, often accidentally, though occasionally as part of superstitious or protective practices. Imagine a servant wearing a simple silver ring, lost as they tend to the privy, or a mother carefully dropping a pendant into the pit as a charm for her children's health. Such objects, crafted with care and worn close to the body, reflect personal identity, social status, and aesthetic values. Their presence in latrines highlights the intersection of the intimate and the accidental, turning a functional space into a repository of human stories, emotion, and material culture. Other unexpected artifacts include fragments of pottery, combs, pins, and utensils. These items, while seemingly mundane, offer profound insights into diet, grooming, and domestic routines. Imagine a comb slipping from hands during use, or a pottery fragment accidentally discarded into a pit while cleaning the home. Each object contributes to a richer understanding of medieval daily life, revealing the textures, rhythms, and challenges of existence, long before modern conveniences. The privy, in this sense, becomes a microcosm of human activity, preserving traces of the ordinary, alongside the extraordinary. The context in which these artifacts are found adds layers of meaning. Archaeologists carefully document not only the objects themselves, but their position, depth, and association with other items. Imagine excavating a latrine and discovering a coin next to a tiny toy animal, partially covered by layers of soil and organic material. Such juxtapositions tell a subtle story of time, loss, and human behavior, illustrating how objects move from private, intentional use into the archaeological record. Each layer of sediment becomes a page in a silent chronicle of life, death, and everyday action, preserved for centuries. Interpretation of these artifacts requires both imagination and scientific rigor. Coins may indicate economic status or local trade practices, while toys and personal items illuminate social norms, family life, and childhood experiences. Jewelry can reveal wealth, craftsmanship, and fashion trends, as well as personal or spiritual beliefs. Imagine piecing together these clues, like a detective assembling a complex puzzle, where every lost or discarded object contributes to a broader understanding of medieval society. The seemingly mundane act of using a latrine becomes, through these finds, a window into social, economic, and cultural dynamics. Surprising patterns emerge when artifacts are compared across different sites and social strata. Castle garderobes often contain higher value items, reflecting wealth and access to luxury goods, while village privies tend to preserve more modest artifacts, such as simple coins or homemade toys. Imagine contrasting the discovery of a silver pendant in a castle pit with a wooden figurine in a village latrine, and understanding that both objects, despite differences in material, reveal universal human behaviors, care, attachment, and the interplay of utility and sentiment. These comparisons illuminate both inequality and shared human experience, bridging gaps between classes, communities, and centuries. Some objects appear to have been placed intentionally for protective or symbolic reasons. Small charms, inscribed tokens, or objects of personal significance were sometimes deposited in latrines as acts of precaution, offering a fascinating glimpse into medieval beliefs. Imagine a parent dropping a tiny figure into a pit, believing it would safeguard a child's health, or a worker placing a protective token in a communal latrine. These deliberate acts demonstrate the integration of superstition, ritual, and practical life, turning the toilet from a space of necessity into a site of spiritual and emotional significance. The emotional resonance of these discoveries is remarkable. Each artifact evokes human presence, intention, and vulnerability. Imagine holding a small coin that slipped from someone's pocket hundreds of years ago, or a toy that once sparked joy in a child's day. These items, preserved by soil and time, allow us to feel a direct connection to lives long past. In the quiet act of excavation, historians and archaeologists become witnesses to intimate moments, revealing that even in spaces associated with waste, human experience, creativity, and emotion are palpable and enduring. Artifacts in latrines also shed light on the practical realities of medieval life. Items discarded or lost provide clues about diet, hygiene, and domestic routines. Fragments of pottery reveal what people ate, while pins and combs indicate grooming practices. Imagine reconstructing a day in the life of a medieval household from these fragments: a mother tending to children, a child playing with a toy, coins exchanged in market transactions, and servants carefully managing the privy. Each artifact becomes part of a broader narrative, illuminating the rhythms, priorities, and challenges of life in a tangible, vivid way. Moreover, these findings highlight the unexpected ways in which private and public life intersected. Personal items deposited in shared or communal latrines create a record of individual presence within a social environment. Imagine a village privy, where children, adults, and servants leave traces side by side, each object a silent testament to their existence, choices, and interactions. The latrine becomes a communal memory, preserving evidence of social dynamics, habits, and relationships, offering a rare window into the otherwise invisible layers of medieval society. Finally, the study of unexpected artifacts in toilets invites reflection on continuity and change. While technology and hygiene practices have evolved dramatically, the human impulses behind these discoveries, care for family, hope for protection, play, and the desire to leave a mark, remain familiar. Imagine contemplating a small coin, toy, or piece of jewelry, and realizing that despite centuries of history, human concerns, joys, and anxieties resonate across time. These artifacts remind us that even in the most mundane spaces, life is rich with meaning, creativity, and enduring human connection. Through coins, toys, jewelry, and other small items, medieval toilets reveal a hidden archive of life, reflecting both ordinary and extraordinary experiences. They remind us that history is not only preserved in grand buildings, written documents, or monumental art, but also in the quiet, overlooked spaces where people lived, played, and left traces of their existence. By studying these artifacts, we gain empathy, insight, and a deeper understanding of medieval life, connecting across centuries to the intimate human moments that define daily existence. Imagine stepping quietly into a medieval village at dusk. The narrow alleys lined with timbered cottages, and the faint glow of lanterns flickering through windows. Among these familiar sights lies an experience that is largely invisible in historical texts: the sensory reality of medieval toilets. While we often focus on the functional or architectural aspects, the smells, textures, and sounds of these spaces profoundly shaped daily life. The human encounter with a latrine was not merely physical, it was an immersive multisensory experience, blending discomfort, adaptation, and even ritualized coping strategies that reveal much about medieval ingenuity and resilience. The most immediate and unavoidable aspect of the latrine was its smell. In village privies, the combination of human waste, stagnant water, straw, and organic debris created odors that could be overpowering. Imagine approaching a wooden bench over a pit, the air thick with earthy, pungent scents that spoke of decay and neglect. In larger castles, while architecture and water channels mitigated odor, the presence of many people in close quarters meant that smells were a constant, if less intense, companion. Residents learned to navigate these spaces with a mixture of practical skill, timing, and sensory awareness, understanding that their physical experience of the latrine was inseparable from its olfactory reality. Materials and design played a key role in shaping these sensory experiences. Straw, rushes, or moss were often spread on latrine benches to provide comfort and absorb moisture, subtly influencing both touch and smell. Wooden seats, often worn smooth by repeated use, added warmth and texture. Imagine the sensation of sitting on a carefully placed rush mat, feeling the contours of the bench beneath you, while the faint scent of herbs or water-soaked straw mingled with the natural odors of the pit. These tactile and olfactory elements created a layered sensory experience, transforming a purely functional act into a moment of adaptation and awareness. Herbs and aromatic plants were sometimes used to manage odors and improve the sensory environment. Mint, sage, rosemary, and wormwood might be sprinkled in privies or garderobes, providing a faintly pleasant scent and a symbolic layer of protection against disease. Imagine leaning over a wooden seat as the delicate fragrance of crushed herbs fills the air, a small comfort in an otherwise challenging environment. These choices reflect both practical knowledge and cultural beliefs, demonstrating how medieval people integrated natural remedies into their sensory and hygienic routines. Sound also contributed to the sensory landscape of medieval toilets. The creak of wood, the rush of water in castle chutes, and the occasional movement of animals or insects created a complex auditory environment. Imagine the quiet echo of footsteps on stone floors, punctuated by the distant flow of a river below a castle garderobe. In villages, the gentle rustling of straw, the scraping of wooden seats, and the murmur of conversation outside the latrine added texture to the auditory experience. These sounds, subtle yet pervasive, shaped how people perceived and interacted with these spaces, influencing behavior, timing, and even social etiquette. Lighting and visual experience were also significant. Privies were often dimly lit, relying on small windows, lanterns, or natural daylight filtering through cracks. Imagine sitting in a shadowed wooden structure, the faint light revealing the textures of straw, wood, and stone, while the surrounding darkness accentuates the privacy of the space. In castles, stone garderobes might incorporate small openings that allowed glimpses of the landscape below, combining functional ventilation with a sense of orientation and connection to the environment. The interplay of light and shadow enhanced the sensory experience, adding layers of awareness, comfort, and occasional wonder. Temperature and climate further influenced the sensory reality. In colder regions, wooden seats could be icy in winter, prompting the use of straw or rushes for insulation. In warmer climates, ventilation became critical to manage both heat and odor. Imagine a villager shivering as they settle onto a straw-lined bench on a chilly morning, or a castle inhabitant adjusting to the humidity and warmth of a sunlit garderobe. These physical sensations were inseparable from the broader sensory experience, shaping comfort, behavior, and timing of use throughout the day. The sensory experience of medieval toilets was not solely about discomfort, it also reflected adaptation, creativity, and ritual. People learned to manage odors through timing, positioning, and the use of natural materials. Herbs, straw, and ventilation systems provided subtle sensory cues that guided behavior and maintained hygiene. Imagine a careful household routine, where members coordinate the use of privies, sprinkle herbs, and adjust ventilation to create a manageable and relatively comfortable environment. These practices demonstrate practical intelligence, blending observation, experience, and cultural knowledge into everyday life. Social context also shaped sensory perceptions. In communal latrines, odors, sounds, and textures were shared, requiring negotiation, etiquette, and tolerance. Imagine multiple villagers using a shared privy, each navigating the sensory environment with awareness of others, balancing privacy, hygiene, and social norms. Even in private castle garderobes, servants and residents were attuned to the sensory dynamics of shared spaces, ensuring that odors, noise, and comfort were managed discreetly. These interactions highlight the complex interplay between environment, human behavior, and social expectation in shaping sensory experience. Artifacts found in latrines further inform our understanding of sensory management. Traces of herbs, rushes, and other organic materials reveal intentional efforts to influence smell, texture, and comfort. Coins, toys, and small personal items indicate that people engaged with the space in multiple ways, combining necessity, play, and superstition. Imagine uncovering these objects centuries later, recognizing that each choice, herb placement, bench lining, or dropped item, was a deliberate response to sensory and practical challenges. These finds illuminate the intelligence, creativity, and care that permeated even the most private and functional spaces of daily life. The emotional and psychological dimension of sensory experience is equally significant. Odors, textures, and sounds could provoke discomfort, embarrassment, or anxiety, yet they also encouraged mindfulness, adaptation, and resilience. Imagine a villager pausing to consider the best way to use a privy, adjusting positioning or timing to minimize discomfort, and subtly managing awareness of the surrounding environment. These strategies, passed down through generations, demonstrate the quiet wisdom embedded in daily routines, reflecting both human adaptability and the nuanced interplay between body environment and social expectation. Finally, the study of smells and sensory experiences in medieval toilets offers profound insight into the lived reality of the past. These spaces, often dismissed or overlooked, reveal the intimate ways in which humans navigated physical, social, and environmental challenges. The olfactory, tactile, auditory, and visual dimensions of latrines shaped daily behavior, influenced hygiene practices, and provided subtle avenues for comfort, ritual, and creativity. Imagine standing in a dimly lit herb-scented privy, feeling the textures beneath you, hearing the quiet sounds around, and understanding that each element, material, scent, sound, was carefully negotiated to meet human needs. Through the lens of sensory experience, medieval toilets emerge as complex, adaptive spaces that blend necessity, ingenuity, and human perception. They remind us that even in areas devoted to the most basic functions, life is rich with texture, awareness, and subtle beauty. By studying these dimensions, we gain empathy for people who lived centuries ago, appreciating their resilience, creativity, and thoughtful engagement with the world around them. Medieval latrines, with their smells, sounds, textures, and rituals, provide a vivid, immersive window into daily life, connecting us intimately with the past in a manner both profound and surprisingly relatable. Imagine walking through a modern city, the hum of plumbing, running water, and tiled bathrooms surrounding you. The convenience we take for granted is, in many ways, the culmination of centuries of innovation, adaptation, and human experience, much of it rooted in the humble medieval latrine. While these spaces were once maligned for their odors, complexity, and lack of comfort, they embody lessons in engineering, hygiene, social organization, and human ingenuity that resonate even today. The legacy of medieval toilets is not merely historical trivia, it is a living testament to the ways in which societies address necessity, creativity, and the pursuit of health and dignity. Medieval latrines illustrate early principles of sanitation that informed later developments. Castle garderobes, often positioned over moats or rivers, utilized gravity and flowing water to remove waste efficiently. Even in villages, pit latrines incorporated ventilation, strategic placement, and natural materials to manage odors and contamination. Imagine the careful observation required to align pits, design chutes, and manage water flow, a combination of intuition, experience, and empirical knowledge. These design strategies foreshadow modern sanitation systems, showing that long before indoor plumbing, people were thinking systematically about waste management, public health, and environmental integration. The use of materials in medieval latrines offers another lesson for contemporary sanitation. Stone, brick, and timber were chosen not only for availability, but for durability, hygiene, and ease of maintenance. Wooden seats were reinforced, chutes lined with stone, and pits carefully constructed to prevent collapse. Imagine a medieval craftsman working meticulously to balance function with longevity, creating structures that could serve multiple generations. Today, modern engineers continue this same balance of material science, durability, and user comfort, yet the roots of these principles are evident in the adaptive ingenuity of medieval builders. Medieval latrines also reveal early understandings of environmental and public health considerations. The placement of toilets away from living quarters and water sources, coupled with ventilation strategies and the use of herbs, demonstrates a practical approach to disease prevention. Imagine villagers coordinating the sitting of a privy, considering wind direction, soil type, and proximity to communal wells. These decisions reflect an intuitive grasp of contamination risks and communal well-being, principles that underpin modern sanitation codes, urban planning, and hygiene standards. The past, in this sense, informs the present, reminding us that health-conscious design is timeless and universally necessary. Social organization around latrine use provides further insight. In castles, servants maintained garderobes discreetly while nobles enjoyed privacy and efficiency. In villages, communal latrines required shared responsibilities, etiquette, and coordination. Imagine a medieval household or community negotiating access, maintenance, and hygiene routines. These social practices illustrate that sanitation is not purely technical, it is deeply intertwined with social norms, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Modern sanitation initiatives, from municipal planning to public education, continue to rely on similar principles of organization, awareness, and collective action. The artifacts preserved in medieval latrines, coins, toys, jewelry, herbs, and charms, also carry lessons for today. They demonstrate that even in spaces devoted to basic necessity, people integrated ritual, superstition, and personal care. Imagine a child dropping a toy into a pit, or a mother placing herbs to protect her family's health. These practices reveal that sanitation is not only about removing waste, it is about creating environments that support dignity, safety, and psychological comfort. Modern sanitation design similarly emphasizes user experience, accessibility, and the integration of environmental cues to promote hygiene behavior. The human-centered approach, evident in medieval practices, continues to inform contemporary design thinking. Innovation and adaptation are central to the legacy of medieval toilets. Builders and households constantly refined designs to address odors, prevent collapse, manage water flow, and accommodate varying social needs. Imagine a craftsman observing the effects of rain, wear, and daily use, and adjusting construction techniques over time. This iterative approach mirrors modern engineering methods, where observation, experimentation, and adaptation drive improvements. Medieval latrines teach us that even in resource-limited contexts, ingenuity, careful observation, and responsiveness to challenges can produce remarkably effective solutions. The sensory experiences of medieval latrines, smells, textures, and sounds, also provide enduring lessons. By addressing olfactory, tactile, and auditory factors, medieval people mitigated discomfort and promoted usability. Imagine using a straw-lined privy, adjusting ventilation, and sensing the subtle fragrance of herbs. These adaptations underscore the importance of considering human perception in sanitation design. Today, architects and engineers similarly integrate sensory considerations, from odor control to ergonomic seating and environmental lighting, recognizing that user experience is crucial to effective hygiene practices. Medieval latrines also illustrate the intersection of private and public responsibilities in sanitation. While individual households managed their own facilities, communal latrines required cooperation, shared maintenance, and social negotiation. Imagine villagers coordinating pit emptying, replacing straw, or reinforcing wooden seats. This balance of personal and collective responsibility is mirrored in modern public health initiatives, waste management policies, and community sanitation programs. History reminds us that infrastructure alone is insufficient. Successful sanitation requires participation, awareness, and commitment from all members of society. The discovery of unexpected artifacts in latrines highlights the importance of resilience and adaptability. Objects lost or discarded, coins, toys, jewelry, reveal how people adapted to circumstances, integrated daily life into functional spaces, and maintained a sense of continuity and identity. Imagine a small coin slipping into a pit centuries ago, preserved as evidence of human presence, care, and routine. These lessons extend metaphorically to modern sanitation systems. They must be resilient, adaptable, and responsive to human behavior and environmental change. Understanding past ingenuity helps guide contemporary innovation and sustainability in waste management. Education and awareness were implicit components of medieval sanitation. The placement of charms, herbs, and the strategic use of latrines reflects knowledge passed down through generations, combining empirical observation with cultural beliefs. Imagine a young villager learning from parents how to manage a privy effectively, observing practices that reduce odor and prevent contamination. Today, hygiene education continues to play a critical role in promoting health, illustrating that knowledge transfer and cultural practice are as vital as engineering in achieving effective sanitation outcomes. Finally, reflecting on the legacy of medieval toilets encourages a broader appreciation of human ingenuity and adaptability. From pit latrines to castle garderobes, these spaces reveal a sophisticated understanding of materials, design, social dynamics, and human experience. Imagine walking through a modern bathroom, recognizing that centuries of trial, error, observation, and creative problem-solving have culminated in the convenience we enjoy today. Medieval toilets, often overlooked or maligned, offer enduring lessons in resilience, innovation, human-centered design, and the delicate balance between necessity, comfort, and health. Through the lens of history, we see that sanitation is not merely a technical challenge, but a deeply human endeavor. Medieval latrines, with their architectural ingenuity, social organization, sensory awareness, and preserved artifacts, remind us that even in the most humble spaces, human creativity, observation, and adaptation flourish. Modern sanitation owes its foundations to these practices, illustrating continuity across centuries and the enduring relevance of past wisdom. Imagine the quiet reverence with which we can regard these hidden spaces, recognizing their role in shaping our health, comfort, and daily life. In conclusion, the legacy of medieval toilets extends far beyond their original function. They embody lessons in engineering, social coordination, hygiene, user experience, and adaptation that resonate today. From the carefully engineered castle garderobe to the resourceful village privy, these spaces reflect the intersection of necessity, creativity, and human resilience. By studying, understanding, and appreciating these humble structures, we gain not only historical insight, but also practical guidance, inspiration, and respect for the ingenuity of those who lived centuries before us. Imagine the quiet corridors of a medieval castle, or the narrow lanes of a village, where behind the walls and doors lie stories that are as surprising as they are amusing. Medieval toilets, often overlooked in history books, were not just functional spaces, they were sites of curiosity, mishap, and human humor. While much of our understanding focuses on hygiene or sanitation, the human element introduces a wealth of stories that reveal personalities, social dynamics, and unexpected moments of levity. These tales, preserved through archaeology, historical records, or oral tradition, provide a window into the lived experiences of medieval people, their wit, and their creativity. One particularly amusing category involves accidental drops. Coins, toys, and even pieces of clothing often slipped into pits, leading to both frustration and quiet amusement. Imagine a young noble child leaning over a castle garderobe, carefully inspecting a favorite toy, only for it to tumble into the darkness below. The immediate reaction might be alarm or despair, followed by an awkward negotiation with a servant tasked with retrieval. These small human moments reveal the intersection of daily life with the unpredictable nature of medieval toilets, creating stories that are as relatable today as they were centuries ago. Another common source of odd tales involves mischief and pranks. Children, and sometimes even adults, used privies as a stage for playful acts, testing boundaries and observing reactions. Imagine a group of village children cautiously tossing small objects into a neighbor's latrine pit, giggling at the consequences, or a servant cleverly leaving a harmless trick to surprise a visitor. These playful acts, while seemingly trivial, illustrate the enduring human desire to entertain, experiment, and engage creatively with the environment, even in spaces devoted to necessity. Such stories add texture to the historical narrative, reminding us that humor and curiosity transcend time and circumstance. Unexpected interactions between animals and latrines provide further anecdotes. Cats, dogs, and even birds sometimes found their way into privies, leading to moments of surprise, frustration, or accidental amusement. Imagine a curious cat leaping onto a wooden bench, investigating the scents and sounds, or a small bird fluttering into a castle garderobe, causing a brief flurry before escaping. These interactions reflect the medieval reality of close coexistence with animals, blending utility, hygiene, and the unpredictable rhythms of life. The presence of animals adds both sensory complexity and narrative richness, creating opportunities for light-hearted or even heroic stories. Historical records occasionally capture tales of ingenuity or clever problem-solving related to toilet use. Servants and household members devised clever methods to retrieve lost items, maintain cleanliness, or manage odors with minimal disruption. Imagine a servant carefully constructing a makeshift hook to fish a dropped coin from a pit, or villagers coordinating a delicate system to empty communal latrines without causing chaos. These stories, while practical, often carry elements of suspense and satisfaction, highlighting human creativity and adaptability in navigating challenges that might otherwise seem mundane. Sometimes, toilets became the backdrop for more dramatic or memorable events. Legends tell of secret messages hidden in latrines, clandestine meetings, or objects deposited deliberately to convey intent. Imagine a political messenger slipping a note into a castle garderobe, knowing it would be discovered only by the intended recipient, or a servant leaving a symbolic object in a privy as part of a household ritual. These narratives illustrate that even functional spaces could become stages for human strategy, secrecy, and symbolic action, adding depth and intrigue to our understanding of medieval life. The combination of human error, superstition, and ritual often led to stories that are both amusing and revealing. People occasionally deposited charms, coins, or personal items in hopes of protection or good fortune, creating scenarios that modern observers might find odd or whimsical. Imagine a villager carefully placing a charm in a pit to ensure a child's health, only to later discover that it had been buried under layers of straw and waste. Such acts reveal the intertwined nature of belief, daily routine, and improvisation, demonstrating that medieval people actively engaged with their environment in creative and thoughtful ways. Occasionally, stories revolve around unexpected architectural features. Castle garderobes, with openings over moats or rivers, sometimes led to surprise outcomes. Objects dropped from above could splash or float, and curious onlookers below might witness the unexpected. Imagine a coin slipping from a noble's hand, landing in the water with a quiet splash, prompting astonishment and perhaps laughter from those watching from the banks. These anecdotes underscore the interplay of design, environment, and human interaction, turning everyday infrastructure into a source of narrative richness and gentle amusement. Some stories involve the rhythm and timing of latrine use. In communal settings, the management of privacy, odor, and social etiquette could create tense or comical situations. Imagine multiple villagers arriving simultaneously at a shared privy, negotiating turns, and using subtle gestures to communicate patience or urgency. Such moments, while seemingly trivial, reveal the subtleties of medieval social interaction, highlighting negotiation, courtesy, and humor as integral parts of daily life. Even in spaces devoted to basic functions, social intelligence and adaptability were continuously exercised. Historical research also uncovers stories preserved in artifacts. Coins, jewelry, and toys found in latrines often carry implicit narratives, lost fortunes, cherished possessions, or playful experiments. Imagine discovering a tiny carved animal in a village pit, a token of a child's imagination frozen in time, or a ring that slipped from a noble's hand during a hurried moment. Each object becomes a narrative fragment, inviting speculation and imaginative reconstruction, connecting us to moments of joy, carelessness, and creativity from centuries ago. Moreover, toilets occasionally appear in moralistic or cautionary tales of the period. Clerics, writers, and chroniclers sometimes used latrines as settings for humor, admonishment, or illustration of human folly. Imagine a monk penning a story about a forgetful nobleman whose coin-laden misadventure in the garderobe became a moral lesson on attentiveness and prudence. These stories, while didactic, also preserve the vivid, relatable human experiences surrounding toilet use, blending entertainment with subtle social commentary. Finally, reflecting on fun and odd stories from medieval toilets invites a sense of connection across time. Despite centuries separating us, the humor, creativity, and occasional absurdity of these experiences resonate deeply. Imagine quietly pondering the misadventures, playful acts, and unexpected encounters that occurred behind closed doors, appreciating the humanity and imagination that thrived even in spaces devoted to necessity. Medieval toilets, in their practical function, become a stage for human expression, ingenuity, and the gentle levity that brightens everyday life. Through these tales, we see that toilets were not merely functional, they were places where accidents, humor, ingenuity, and ritual intersected. Coins fell, toys tumbled, pets investigated, and humans reacted with surprise, creativity, or amusement. Each story, preserved through artifacts, records, or oral tradition, provides insight into the rhythms, personalities, and resilience of medieval people. By engaging with these narratives, we gain a richer, more textured understanding of history, appreciating that even in the most ordinary spaces, human experience is full of life, creativity, and unexpected delight. Imagine stepping back from the physical structure of medieval toilets, from the smell of straw-lined pits, the trickle of castle chutes, and the hidden artifacts beneath the floorboards. Beyond the practical and the peculiar lies a deeper reflection on human life, our need for privacy, the ways society organizes daily existence, and the intimate intersection of necessity and culture. Toilets, seemingly mundane, offer a profound lens through which to understand human behavior, social structure, and the timeless concerns that have shaped communities for centuries. Privacy, in particular, emerges as a central theme. In medieval castles, noble residents enjoyed a degree of seclusion and discretion, with garderobes positioned carefully to shield users from observation and to allow dignity in moments that were simultaneously essential and vulnerable. Imagine a lord or lady seated on a stone bench, aware of the strategic placement of walls, chutes, and ventilation, and the servants discreetly ensuring that privacy is maintained. In villages, privacy was more limited, yet even modest households and communal latrines reflected an understanding of personal space and social etiquette. People negotiated proximity, timing, and behavioral norms to preserve dignity within shared or constrained environments. These adaptations reveal that privacy, far from being a modern luxury, has long been a subtle but vital human concern. Society's organization around sanitation underscores the interplay between individual needs and collective responsibility. Servants managed the discreet operation of castle garderobes, while villages coordinated the use, maintenance, and emptying of communal latrines. Imagine the careful choreography of daily life, balancing personal hygiene with social norms, shared labor, and environmental considerations. The rhythm of human activity, from private reflection to public cooperation, was orchestrated through necessity, revealing that even in spaces devoted to basic biological functions, society's structures and expectations were actively negotiated and enforced. Toilets, in this sense, become mirrors of social cohesion and the distribution of resources, illuminating the subtle mechanics of medieval community life. The artifacts preserved in latrines, coins, jewelry, toys, and charms offer intimate glimpses into identity, aspiration, and care. Each dropped coin tells a story of daily economy. Each toy evokes childhood imagination. Each charm embodies hope, superstition, or ritual. Imagine holding a small centuries-old ring that slipped into a castle pit, sensing the person who once wore it, their gestures, their world. These objects are more than historical curiosities. They are the fingerprints of human experience, connecting us emotionally to the lives of individuals across time. Toilets, often relegated to the background of history, emerge as repositories of humanity, preserving the private, accidental, and cherished aspects of life. Human resilience and adaptability are evident in how people manage sanitation challenges. Medieval latrines were rarely comfortable or convenient by modern standards, yet generations devised creative solutions for odor control, waste management, and material durability. Imagine a villager lining a pit with stones, adjusting rushes for comfort, and timing used to minimize disruption, or a castle engineer channeling water through a garderobe to reduce contamination. These acts reflect practical intelligence, observation, and iterative problem-solving. The lessons are timeless. When confronted with environmental or technological constraints, human ingenuity finds ways to maintain hygiene, dignity, and continuity of life. The sensory experience of medieval toilets, smell, sound, texture, and light, reveals the embodied nature of daily life. Imagine leaning over a straw-lined bench, sensing the faint fragrance of herbs mingled with earthiness, hearing the creak of wood beneath you, feeling the contours of a seat worn smooth by generations, and glimpsing sunlight through a narrow opening. These experiences were inseparable from the practical act of elimination, shaping behavior, comfort, and social etiquette. By attending to the full sensory context, we gain empathy for historical inhabitants and appreciation for their careful negotiation of environment, necessity, and social expectation. Modern design principles, from ergonomics to ventilation, continue to draw on these timeless insights into the human experience. Humor and human playfulness also shine through in reflections on medieval toilets. Children dropping toys, adults losing coins, and playful pranks provide levity in spaces associated with necessity. Imagine a child's tiny figurine tumbling into a village pit, followed by a brief period of astonishment and laughter, or a noble discovering a coin slipping from their pocket, prompting a servant's discreet intervention. These moments reveal the universality of curiosity, surprise, and amusement, showing that even in constrained circumstances, human creativity and joy persist. Toilets, far from being mere functional spaces, were stages for subtle storytelling, play, and emotional engagement. Medieval latrines also invite reflection on the balance between health, hygiene, and social equity. The differences between castle and village facilities, engineering, materials, water access, and privacy highlight the impact of resources and status on daily life. Yet within these disparities, we observe shared strategies. Everyone adapted to their environment, used materials wisely, and negotiated social norms to maintain functionality and dignity. Imagine villagers and nobles alike, managing odor, waste, and privacy, each within the limits of their circumstance. These observations underscore that while wealth and status shape experience, human ingenuity, resilience, and the desire for comfort are universal. From a philosophical perspective, toilets illuminate the continuity of human concerns across time. The act of attending to bodily needs, the management of privacy, and the care for hygiene are enduring human imperatives. Imagine the meditative aspect of the privy, a moment of pause amid the bustle of daily life, where thoughts wander and personal reflection occurs. Even the most ordinary spaces provide opportunities for contemplation, adaptation, and connection to others, highlighting that human experience is multifaceted, deeply embodied, and continuously negotiated. Medieval toilets, in this sense, serve as portals into the intimate, practical, and reflective dimensions of life. The study of medieval toilets also fosters humility and perspective. By examining the ingenuity, care, and adaptation of past societies, we gain insight into how modern conveniences have been hard-won through centuries of problem-solving. Imagine flushing a modern toilet with silent confidence, appreciating that behind this ease lies a lineage of architectural innovation, social coordination, and creative adaptation. Toilets, often overlooked in historical reflection, thus become symbols of human progress, resilience, and continuity, connecting the past to present experience in both practical and symbolic ways. Finally, reflecting on privacy, society, and the human experience through the lens of medieval toilets reminds us of the universality of human needs and the ingenuity with which we meet them. From the grandeur of a castle garderobe to the humble village privy, from lost coins and toys to the careful lining of a pit with straw, these spaces reveal the intersection of necessity, creativity, and social awareness. Imagine the centuries of human thought, care, and observation embedded in these structures, each act of maintenance, adaptation, or playful misadventure, contributing to a rich tapestry of experience. In conclusion, medieval toilets are more than historical curiosities. They are mirrors of humanity, reflecting privacy, social dynamics, ingenuity, and the enduring concerns of daily life. They remind us that even in the most ordinary spaces, human experience is layered, meaningful, and deeply connected to community, environment, and culture. By examining these spaces thoughtfully, we gain insight not only into medieval society, but also into our own, recognizing continuity in the ways humans adapt, reflect, and interact across time. Imagine standing quietly in a medieval village, the sights, sounds, and stories of toilets around you, and appreciating the subtle yet profound ways that necessity shapes human creativity, society, and enduring connection.